So the pen that I'm reviewing today is a pen that quite a few of you guys actually asked me to review in the comment section. So when I actually went ahead and purchased this pen, there was actually quite a lot of hype behind this pen, and it really did have quite a lot to live up to when I actually went ahead and received it. So for only about $2 plus free express air shipping, I was more than happy to oblige. So what is this pen that I'm talking about? This is the Jinhao 911, Jinhao 911, whatever you want to call it. And what this pen pretty much is a hooded Jinhao fountain pen that's styled to look like an old Parker, maybe Parker 21, Parker 51, one of those old hooded nibbed Parker pens. And one of the earliest fountain pen reviews I did on this channel was for these pens. This is the Hero 616, this is the Hero 366, and these are one of the many hooded fountain pens that you can get off eBay. I'm also pretty sure Bayer do a similar pen to this, and like the Jinhao that I have purchased here, these pens are knockoffs of Parker. I believe this is a Parker 51 knockoff. And they're cheap, they're crude, the nib's not very good, and the feed is a little bit inconsistent, and they're just one of the many rip-offs that you'll see. Obviously, one of the first pens that I ever got from China, and it was pretty much get what you pay for. And one of the biggest issues I had with this pen was the use of this crappy ink bladder aerometric converter, whatever you want to call it. So I wasn't all that happy with it. But upon receiving this pen, the Jinhao 911, it absolutely blows this pen out of the water. So how does it do it? Well, let's get into the review. So first of all, as always, let's talk about the specs of this pen. So capped, we're looking at about 14.2 centimeters long. Uncapped is about 12.5 centimeters long. Posted, it boosts it to 15.5 centimeters long, and in terms of the weight, it's pretty heavy for its size. So it's about 20 grams posted and 12 grams unposted, so about 8 grams for the cap. And in terms of the grip, well, in terms of the diameter of the pen, it ranges from about 8 to 10 millimeters in the space where you hold it. So in terms of ergonomics, I do like these pens for their ergonomics. These hooded nib pens are pretty ergonomic because there's no defined section where you really need to grip onto it. So if you want to grip onto it back here where it's longer and thicker, you can. Grip on it here where it's a little bit thinner, you can. There's no defined grip section, which I absolutely do love. Whoops. Ooh, don't want to break that or give myself another tattoo. In terms of the length, I think the length is pretty nice. I like to use this pen unposted because it just feels a lot nicer, but the pen posts really well. It slides on the back because this is a friction fit cap, whatever you call it. No threads whatsoever. Posts really well and securely. The only thing is, this is a little bit of a thinner pen, so if you do like your thicker pens that are maybe 14 millimeters wide, this may not be the pen for you, but for $2 it's not that bad. In terms of weight, it is really nice, really weighty. It's made out of stainless steel, which makes it a lot nicer to use than this pen here. The only issue I have with this is this plastic here, not all that resistant to oils and can get a little bit slippery. In terms of the whole body of the pen, as I mentioned before, it is stainless steel, and I really do love stainless steel on these cheaper Chinese pens because stainless steel makes these pens pretty much indestructible no matter how much these pens cost. In terms of the finish, it's not exactly a brushed finish, but it is a pretty dull finish. I do like the brush finishes that maybe my Parker Sonnet or Bayer pens have, but it's pretty good. It resists scratches pretty well, and if there are going to be some scratches that you might pick up from some keys or something, I think it will hide it pretty well. In terms of construction quality, I think this pen is constructed really well made, and it's really thick. If we have a look at the threads of the pen, you'll see the threads, at least on the this part of the pen, the threads are metal, and I do love seeing metal pens. metal threaded pens, you can apply a lot of force and this pen is not going to break anytime soon. Super durable, though the only issue I have is, while these threads here are metal, the threads inside here are plastic. They're made from a plastic injected insert that's just being glued in here. And while that is a little bit annoying because I'd like to see metal on metal threads, not metal on plastic threads, it is pretty damn durable, but as always, metal body, no eyedropping that at all. Now, one of the good things I really do love about this pen over this pen is the use of a standard international converter, and of course you get these converters for free. These converters hold a little bit less than a mil of ink, and that translates to about a week, more than a week's use of ink, because the ink isn't used all that fast in this pen. But I gotta say, Standard International works 100% all the time. These crappy bladder pens, really, they don't work all that well. At best, you get 80% capacity. Sometimes if you get a fake, yeah, I know, a fake of a fake, I was pretty surprised when I learnt that, but you can get a fake of a fake and these just won't work some of the time. So I'm really happy that Jinhao opted to use these converters. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about the nib of the fountain pen, because usually nibs make or break these cheap Chinese pens, and I'm just going to put it out before I get into the video. I'm not the biggest fan of hooded nibbed fountain pens. You don't get as much line variation with these pens, though the big trade-off with these pens is less line variation, but you can write with these pens much faster than a normal fountain pen. But me, I'm just going to put it out there, these aren't my favourite types of nibs, though I gotta say this nib is pretty good when you compare it to maybe this old hero or this other old hero. So this pen has a hooded nib. It is a 0.38 extra fine nib, and I've got to say the Chinese haven't really mastered extra fine nibs so far. I think it's a little bit thicker than 0.38 millimeters, and while Chinese nibs are generally a little bit thicker than Japanese nibs, this is a little bit thicker than my Pilot Fine. In terms of the actual nib itself, I think the nib's being constructed really well. The Chinese must have found a good grinding process, because all the fine nibs that I'm getting nowadays are usually really good. This one here is buttery smooth, there is very little feedback, and that's pretty good. In terms of line variation, as I said before, you're not going to get much line variation out of this nib. If you press down, you're going to get a little bit more ink flowing out from the feed, but that's pretty much it. You pretty much trade that for speed of writing, and I've got to say, you can certainly write quite fast on this pen. In terms of natural line variation, you're not going to get much out of this pen. The nib's been ground pretty much to a circle, so you're not going to get any natural line variation. In terms of wetness, this is a below average pen in wetness, and usually when I start writing with this pen, I'll always saturate the feed. So just maybe half a turn, that's all you need, and the feed will be saturated. And when you saturate this nib, it's a lovely writer. Though in terms of writing with this pen for long periods of time, I usually find that after about 20 to 30 minutes of writing, I'll have to resaturate the nib. It doesn't completely dry out 100%, but it's not as fun to write with when it's starting to dry up. In terms of reliability, I think this is a pretty reliable pen. Sometimes I will put this pen down, come back after a while, and it will hard start, but more often than not, the pen will work completely fine. Though I can't really fault it for it because, you know, it is a $2 pen. And I'm pretty sure that that's pretty much it. I will mention reverse writing is a little bit drying. Reverse writing, you can do it, it's not scratchy, but it is pretty drying. And that's pretty much it. We'll get into the writing sample for this pen. Alright then, let's get into a writing sample for the Jinhao 911. I have saturated the ink, so if it is a little bit wetter than normal, it probably is because I've saturated it. This nib right now has the 0.38 extra fine, and the ink is lammy turquoise. And the paper that I'm using right now is Clairefontaine. So, quick and easy writing sample. Awesome, went off without a hitch. So this writing sample is pretty much what you'll get with the Jinhao 911. There's not much line variation, but there was no issues at all. You can see there's pretty much no line variation at all, but I was able to write that a little bit quicker than a normal fountain pen. In terms of shading for the ink, there is a little bit of shading. For example, here is a little bit lighter, a little bit darker than here. You can see there's a little bit of shading just all around the place, but it's nothing special. In terms of writing quickly, I would struggle to read that myself, but you get the point. It worked flawlessly. It kept up well, but I'm pretty sure if I continue to do that for maybe 10-15 minutes, it would start to dry out a little bit and I'd have to resaturate the feed. In terms of the feed, because I have saturated the feed recently, it would be a little bit below average still. Yeah, on Clairefontaine paper, most pens are a little bit wetter than that, but it works fine. If we look at line variation, there should be almost none. So this is with no pressure, and I'll gradually build up pressure. There is pretty much no variation between that, no pressure, and full pressure. The only difference you're going to get is as you build up pressure, you're going to let a little bit more ink onto the page, so the ink will be a little bit darker because there's more ink. In terms of natural line variation, there's pretty much none whatsoever. And in terms of pressing down hard, the only thing you're going to get is a darker line when you're pressing down because there's a lot more pressure, a lot more ink. In terms of reverse writing, pretty much scratch resistant. Well, there's no scratch at all, but it is a lot drier doing it, and the line's not that much thinner. If you want to compare this pen to a hero pen, this is the Jinhao 911. And the next pen I will bring up is the Hero pen. Now the Hero pen isn't terrible or anything. Well, it is not very good, but what I'm meaning to say is the Hero pen, actually is bad. Scratch what I said. The first thing I said was actually accurate. Come on. There we go. This is the Hero 616, and you can immediately hear it's a lot more scratchier than the Jinhao pen. And the feed is a little bit is pretty inconsistent from what you can see here. Here is dry, but everywhere else it's really wet. So feed inconsistent, and lines are actually pretty much the same, but as you can see, super wet along here, and it's pretty much dried out along here, so not a good pen.